It is incredibly hard to get money when you need money. Banks don't want to give money to anyone who needs money. They love giving money to people who don't need it.
Today we have J.C Granger, who's the CEO of Infinity Marketing Group. Welcome, JC.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me, man.
Welcome. So I'm interested. Tell me about your journey. How did you get started? What is your what business are you in exactly, and how did you get started?
Well, I guess I won't go too far back in the journey. I'm not going to go to the womb,
No,
right?
that's
I'll just keep it. I'll keep
that's
it.
good. That's good.
Yeah. um, well, it's funny. I had always. Do you remember that movie? That movie Big with Tom Hanks. Do you remember that? It's an old
Yeah, it rings a bell.
80s
Yeah.
movie. It's an old 80s movie where basically, he makes a wish that he could be big and he was a kid. So he ended up becoming Tom Hanks, right? And there's a scene where he's in a boardroom because he's still a kid inside his head, but he's an adult as a man, and he's in this boardroom for this toy company, and there's this guy with this chart and graph. It was actually the dad from Home Alone. That was the same actor. And he kept saying, well, look at this robot that turns into a building. It's gonna be the greatest toy ever because look at all these numbers. Look at how these charts and graphs stack up. And he kept raising his hand, Tom Hanks, and he kept saying, I don't get it. I don't get it. Right. And it was really frustrating this guy. And it was just a funny scene because, he's a kid and he's like, I don't care. He goes, there's nothing cool about this building that turns into like, that's a toy that turns into a building. And he's like, so he just doesn't get it. And I remember when I watched that movie, I remember thinking to myself, because I watched it later, when I was a later teenager, that I never wanted to be that guy in the suit looking at charts and graphs to predict any kind of future for a product or a service. I wanted to be that kid in my head who was just raising his hand like I don't get it, right? Just looking at it from that pure point of view. And so when I had the chance to go and get maybe a marketing degree, I decided to get a psychology degree instead. And I loved marketing. I went straight into marketing after college, but I got a psychology degree because what I understood just from that moment on was that times change, right? Technology changes, cultures change, things like that. But fundamentally, who we are as human beings, how we think and operate, that doesn't really change. And if you understand how people think, you leave very little to chance. And so that's kind of where my segue, my start into wanting to do marketing came from, was this realization that if you can just pin down how people think, you can it's easy to show them and the right stuff and sell them products and services. And so that kind of got me started in marketing. And that was gosh, over 20 years ago that I started doing marketing, and I started my agency about 11 years ago.
Wow, great. And what does it look like now?
It's hectic. It's funny. There's a client, an old client of mine, and a friend, and a guy I follow online. His name's Jason Swank. He has a podcast that helps agents. And one thing he always says,
I
he
know him.
says that he
Yeah.
calls it the accidental agency, right? And I was like, and that was me, right? I wasn't trying to start an agency. I quit my job one day. My daughter was 4 years old. I want to spend more time with her. I was making a lot of money at the I was working for it, you know what I mean? Like a lot. And I was missing that time, with her. So I was like, you know what? Forget it. I quit, went to making significantly less, and all we were doing was turning big websites into tiny websites because at the time everyone had a smartphone, but websites were not automatically responsive. This was that gray area about 2 or 3 years
Mm,
where websites were not automatically mobile friendly, right? And so all we did was take big websites and make them tiny for people, right? But then that just kind of snowballed into people would say, well, you made our website tiny. Can you make our big website look better? And so, of course, we said yes, and we figured it out. And then we got good at that. And then they said, well, can you do social media for us? And we said yes, and we figured that out. And it just kept, but before you know it, you've got 8 services going, and you're doing it for all these different types of people. And that's the accidental agency owner, and that's how it started. But over the years, where we've dialed into now is now we only do 2 services for one demographic. It's we
great.
got it. We do a couple things for one people, and we do lead generation mostly through email and LinkedIn. Right, we specialize in cold outbound lead generation for salespeople and sales teams at B2B tech companies. So it's a very specific niche that we operate within. We take in clients from other industries because it's fundamentally the same, but we go after B2B tech.
Great, that's good. And how have you found kind of niching the business down has affected overall the success?
Oh God, massive. And it's something that you have to do, but it's not easy to do. People say, "Oh, just niche down," and like, okay, yes, but where do you start that process? How do you even? You have to go through that accidental agency stage for a few years to even find out who you are as an agency. What's your culture? What are you good at? What do you like doing? By the way, those two things are not always the same,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then even when you have that down, even when you start paring down your services to things that you just are really, really good at, and you start specializing services, then you have to turn your attention to like, okay, well, who do you want to do it for? Or vice versa. Some people, they pick the industry first and then they're full service for them, like we were, and then we pare down our services. So, it's just really, it's trial by fire in that sense, where you start realizing what you don't like. You start realizing industries you don't like working with because maybe they're too regulated and it's just hard to deal with compliance. Maybe they're, the type of people that just are not your personality type, and it's hard to work with them as people. So everyone listening probably has had that happen before. So you really just kind of pare it down by the things you don't like first. And then the things that you're really passionate about, you get really, really good at, and then it's easy to start transitioning to that. You can't do it overnight, but you start saying no to some things as revenue comes in. And the cool thing about doing that is logistically, everything is so much easier. We had 8 services going at once. That's 8 divisions if you think about it, right?
Mm.
That's a lot of cross communication and logistics and stuff that have to work together. And that was just a pain. It was a big pain. Now we do 2 things. Easy.
Great, great. And you've probably gotten really, really good at just those two things. So you've
Oh, yeah.
specialized and you're amazing at them
Yeah.
now.
We are, well, for one, I know for a fact that we're one of the top agencies in the US that does LinkedIn marketing. There is a lot of competition though, but I know that we're in that like top 1 or 2%. When it comes to cold outbound email marketing, we're one of the only games in town, period. Because almost no agency does it as a service. There's a lot of softwares
Mm.
that you can buy and whatnot. But I know the only reason I know that we're one of the only agencies that specializes in creating the whole infrastructure and literally building a cold outbound system, where we can acquire the list for them and everything, right? We write the copy, we deal with all the technical stuff like the IP addresses and domains. We stay can spam compliant, so everything's super legal and eaten good, and we're getting 30-40% open rates. Like, it's crazy,
Wow,
right? That's
that's
not that's
huge.
Yeah, that's not even, that's unheard of. That's unheard of in a lot of warm email campaigns, let alone a cold email campaign. Those are the 1% usually, and we're at 30-40-50% sometimes. But we know that we're one of the only ones that do that, especially that well, because other email software companies, they refer clients to us when the client wants more of a service and not just a software. So that's nice. So anyone listening, if you're not sure, if you should pare down your services, the answer is yes, you should, because you can be this. You put all your mental energy into figuring out how to be the absolute best at those things or that one thing. And then you get known as the expert, the go-to agency. And now we have bigger and bigger companies that are calling us and getting referred to us from big players in the market. And it's just really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because you also get, like you said, you get known for something, and then because you're so good at it, then word spreads. So run us through that process, and I'm asking kind of from my own perspective as well, because I've been through a niching down process. There's a lot of fear around losing large parts of the market segments. There's a big psychological shift that has to happen in the business owner, to be, or CEO for that to happen. Run us through some of that psychology behind that and your own experience.
Well, I will say this, and because like I said, it's so easy for someone just to say, "Oh, niche down and pick one and just do it, man." I hear that a lot. I heard a lot before we could do it, and I will say this, when you're an entrepreneur, when you are either a startup or COVID maybe took a big swipe at you and you kind of almost had to start over if you survived at all. You got to do what you got to do when you got to do it, right? You when you first start off, yeah, you're offering everything to everyone because you don't really have a choice, right? You take any business you can to come in because you got to keep the lights on. And I get that. I empathize with that. once you get past that stage, by doing that, by the way, once you make enough money to where you can say, okay, we're good on revenue, we can start saying no. I think the easiest path to take is the industry first, because if you're not sure which services to cut, or maybe listen, you got a lot of employees and you love them and you don't want to get rid of any of them, I get that too. If you're a person like me who just really wants to take care of your people, it's hard to start cutting staff. So I'd say the first phase would be pick an industry that you really enjoy working with, and first, make a list of like your top five that you're like, hey, I love those industries. Okay, now that top five, then say, okay, now which of these top five do I think I could get an ROI for fastest? Right.
Mm.
So if you already like those five, then really the deal breaker, or the tiebreaker, I should say, is who can you help the most and the quickest, right? Who can you give the best experience to? Does that mean that they made that, if even if it's number five, the difference between number 1 and 5 on your list probably isn't that far. My daughter's going to start picking colleges this year. And I told her, and she's like, oh, where should I go? Like location wise. I said, no. First, you start backwards. Like pick whatever the major that you want is first, right? I said, and once you know that, I said, then go and look up the top 10 schools for that major. I said the actual difference between number 1 and number 10 is very small. And then I said, so you got your top 10. I said, now if you want to, live by the beach, well, pick the one that's in California or Florida. Like, okay, fine. Right. So, but you want to start in a place that matters the most. So I said, you pick the industry first. And then the tiebreaker becomes, okay, well, who can you help the fastest? Because your reputation will be built based on the results you get for your clients. So after you narrow it down to that, and then again, experiment, right? Maybe you can start with a couple, whatnot, but start your outbound marketing toward that industry you pick. Remember, you're going to have referrals from other industries. I'm not saying say no to those. We keep about 20% of our client base completely random for two reasons. One is we get a lot of referrals, and I don't like turning people away if I can help them, right? I feel bad. So I'm like, hey, you know what? And I know I can help them. So I take them in for that reason. And the second reason is you would be shocked at what cool ideas you get to market for your target industry by working with completely unrelated ones. Like
Mm.
we have a client that we have a roofing client, right? That has nothing to do with B2B tech, not even a little bit, but we crush it for them because our process is fundamentally works from the ground up regardless. But a couple of things we learned from their campaigns helped us with some tech campaigns. We're like, oh, we didn't think about that. What if we said it like this, the way we do in that other campaign? So sometimes you should just keep a little bit to keep it, quote, spicy, as I call it.
Yeah, I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. And so,
Yeah.
what made you want to specialize in B2B tech companies to begin with?
Well, man, I was that kid in the Bay Area, like hacking AWOL when I was 12, like in my dad's basement, right? Like that's me.
Okay,
That's my
yeah.
that's my
I know
origin
that.
story.
I know
Like I
the
live in
type.
Denver now. I live in Denver now, which is a tech city, but I grew up in the Bay Area, and so I always loved tech. So tech was the easy part. B2B versus B2C. Honestly, B2B is harder. I guess I've always been drawn to the harder thing. I mean, I always take the hard way to do everything. Ask my parents, right? Um, but I like the big wins too. So B2C, if I can sell, get a client to sell 100 things, and it was at $20 a pop. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, the volume sounds good and all, but what I like about B2B is that when I can help a client close a deal, that's to them is worth 50,000, 100,000, $1 million. That's cool. Like I like that. And it's harder because it takes to build a relationship. And where psychology really comes in, obviously use it for B2C all day long, but there's a different depth to, to consumer and psychology when you have to go into relationship building, right? And we're really good at that. So that's kind of how we got into the B2B side of tech. Tech was easy because I'm a techie, you know.
That's great. I love it. I love it. And so then what advice would you give to a business owner or CEO having been through that growth and scaling yourself, and obviously working with a number of clients to do that for them? If they're, struggling to hit that next level or they really want to aggressively hit that next level in their business, what advice would you give to them?
Well, I wish it's hard to pick one, but I'd say if you're trying to aggressively go, if you've gotten over that hump where you can actually start niching down, you can start saying no to certain things and whatnot. I think the next step after that, and it's probably not going to be one that most people would say, but I would say shore up capital. And here's why. This is a piece of advice that is not normally given. You get some
No.
like your standard three. You get your and invest in good teams and culture, like, and that's all great. 100%. You should do all the things you hear all the time. I'm going to give you a piece of advice that most people are not going to give you. Once you hit the point where you're doing okay and you can actually afford to start niching down and whatnot, shoring up capital, lines of credit, things like that, credit cards. The reason why is if you're in a good spot, that is the best time to start getting money. It's so easy to get money when you don't need money. It is incredibly hard to get money when you need money. Banks don't want to give money to anyone who needs money. They love giving money to people who don't need it. So it's a great timing issue. And this is so important. Here's why I say this. I got this advice given to me in January of 2020.
Oh,
So guess what I did? January and February, I locked up a good hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of capital just at the disposal. Right? We didn't do any loans because we didn't need a loan. A loan, you have to take the money right away. We got lines of credit, credit cards, things that just we didn't have. It just sat there. We're like, all right, we're doing good. And I did it, checked off that box. I was like, that's good advice. I guess I could do that now. Well, a month later, we're all in pandemic lockdown. All the marketing budgets freeze. Everything goes to crap. Right? Clients leaving by in the droves. We survived the pandemic. One, we were lean. We were very cash flow positive, so that helped. But having that access to that capital allowed us to keep our staff on board, to keep our marketing going, and we were one of the only ones left standing when all the dominoes fell. So once things started to pick back up, we bull rushed the market. So am I going to give business advice, about culture or marketing or getting out there in PR? No, because you can get that from anywhere. I'm going to tell you, shore up capital. Like right now, SBA loans and all these things are open and free. I mean, the terms are ridiculously good. Even if you don't need it, get it, because that's going to help you get through something hard. The second reason you get it is this: not that you're trying to prepare for another pandemic, but you get it because if you're doing well and you started niching down, remember your life just got simpler. It's less logistically complicated to have one or two services going for one industry, right?
yes.
Well, once that happens, it starts streamlining your processes internally. It starts streamlining your staff and how many people you need to do what. This is when you can get more with less, so to speak, because you don't have 15 different things going on all the time. And once that happens, you get to this point of being so lean that now you can say, well, wait a minute, why don't we invest in our own marketing for our own growth now, right? We've got the model down to service our clients and we got referrals coming in. Yeah, we got some marketing going out. But then you start accessing that capital. You build a plan and say, okay, we're going to put in 50 grand into paid ads and build these funnels. We're going to put 20 grand into email marketing. We're going to hire 2 more salespeople. And how are you going to do that? Because you're sitting on $500,000 in available capital, but you know that you're not going to lose money on it because you've spent all that time getting your processes and your numbers down. Now you're just scaling. So that's why I say get the capital. It'll help you in case anything goes bad, and it'll allow you to scale now. And that's my best advice.
That
Go out, get what you can out there.
that is great advice. I like that. And what have you found has been the most challenging part of growing JC? Like in terms of, there's obviously been COVID, there's obviously been, some serious bumps in the road. What has been the most challenging part of growing the business over the last 11 years?
Honestly, the hardest part of growing over 11 years is for us was just getting to the point where we wanted to grow, right? And I mean scale, right? Like we're at a scaling spot
Hmm.
now. I can take 20 new clients on in a week, and we wouldn't skip a beat because our processes are down. So the process is the big part. The one thing you want to do that's going to help you grow, and that helped us grow, was getting our processes down. And we actually did a lot of that, even more so in COVID. Like, what else were we doing? Right. It's not like we had a whole ton of clients. I mean, we didn't, obviously it wiped a ton out. We had enough to sustain, which was good. We got lucky. Right. But we used that whole year to completely address our operations side of things. Every single little thing we did, we wrote down exact steps. And then we took those steps and we put it into a software that I love, by the way. And I actually interviewed my first interview I ever did for my podcast, The Future of BizTech, was the CEO of Trainual.com. And I love Trainual because Trainual, like, you can put in all these systems and processes. And as you onboard new people, all you got to do is add their email and you assign them these different, things. Like if they're a salesperson, you assign to the sales stuff or whatever. And it goes and it goes through, they can go through it like a course, like a video course almost, right? And they just go step by step, boom, boom, boom. And that was probably the one thing that helped us scale and grow faster than anything else we've ever done. And the reason being is because our time to onboard either a new client or a new staff member was cut by 75%. When you can get a
Mm.
client onboarded 75% faster or three times faster or whatever, and a new contractor or new full-time employee, because you're like, hey, we got all this business coming, we have to service it now. Holy crap, like we're almost doing too well. How are we going to do this? If you have your training systems and your processes down, you can bring someone in new and they can be up to speed in a tenth of the time that it would have taken you beforehand. So that's what's allowed us to grow, is actually our ability to not crumble under the weight of new sales.
I love that. Yes, perfect. And yeah, because I'm a big fan of systems, and systems really is, and processes. It's really the only way to scale. There is no other way to be able to, take on 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 clients, in a very short space of time without having those systems in place, which is fantastic advice. So, JC, if you could go back 5 years and give your younger self a bit of advice, what would that advice be?
I mean, if I could go back 5 or 10 years or whatever, I would have tried to tell myself who to specialize in first. Like I would have convinced myself to go to target my passion, which is tech. I think I did that a lot later in the game than I should have, right? And there was a lot of different reasons, right, for that. We were doing really well in other industries, but they weren't my passion. We performed great for the clients because our fundamentals of how we built custom campaigns works no matter who it is. But I wasn't passionate about it, and so it felt stale. I started kind of getting like, well, should I sell? Should I do something else now? And then when I really started pivoting into tech, all of a sudden, like, that ambition and that excitement came roaring back. And then I started the podcast because I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I love this. And that's something, even if I sold my company one day, I would just keep the podcast just because I like interviewing, software CEOs, because I geek out on B2B software. I really do. So I think that's what I would tell myself, is like, hey, I would hit myself in the head and say, do what you love, man. Like, go after it. Like that's your passion. Focus on that, and nothing else matters. And so that's probably what I would have told myself.
Perfect. Cool. Interesting question for you. Very, very abstract and very psychological. Um, don't think about it too much. Lion or elephant? Which one and why?
Oh, lion.
Yeah.
Like, I've always had that kind of protector mentality. I like take care of my people, and so I see pride. I see lion. You got one lion, take care of the pride. Like, that's just how I was raised. You know what I mean? That's my kind of my core values.
Yeah, I love it. That's really cool. JC, thanks. That's been really great. So, finally, who can you best help, and how can they get in touch with you if they want that help?
Well, like I said, we don't really turn away any referrals that come to us, because we do like to keep a certain percentage of our business to be completely random, because our fundamental process works no matter what the industry is. But we go after, we really specialize in B2B tech companies, like I was saying before. We specialize in doing specifically cold outbound email, cold outbound LinkedIn campaigns, and getting those relationships built so people can close big deals, right? Helping sales teams. So as far as getting a hold of us, they can go to our website, infinitymgroup.com. The M stands for marketing, so infinitymgroup.com. And then they can find me on LinkedIn, J.C. Granger. So you can find me there. I live on LinkedIn, obviously. And if somebody wants to email me, they can just email me at jc at infinitymgroup.com. And lastly, Ryan, for your guests here, or for your audience, I should say,
Hmm.
if they mention your podcast when they get in touch with me or us, then what I will do for them personally is I will do a free targeting session on LinkedIn with them. Now, my people might say, well, what's the purpose of that? It's like, well, there's how you think you should be targeting for when you're going after people, and then there's these little ninja tricks that are in there, because really everything, all marketing is getting the right message in front of the right people at the right time. You can't control the time, so you just do it all the time. All right. The message, well, that'll be something that they can either do themselves or they can hire us for. But the part I'll give them for free is the right people. I will help them get the right people, and the targeting is key to everything when it comes to marketing.
Absolutely, it is. Thank you very much, JC. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast.
Hey, my pleasure, Ryan. Good talking to you.
Thank you.